everyone likes something different. So it's more about discovering what you like, and everyone has a preference for something. So some people have a preference maybe to do the technical stuff or like to sit and dig into something. Other people like to talk. So it's more about discovering your preference, I would say. It gives you strength and an advantage, because if you do something according with your preference, natural one, then you will always have more energy.
Welcome back to the Randall Osché Podcast. I'm Randall Osché. The idea behind this podcast is pretty simple. There are people who have come before us, done interesting things, learned some lessons along the way, and I think there's a lot we can take away from sitting down and hearing their stories. Today I'm joined by Ewelina Kurtys. Ewelina started her career in neuroscience and academia, and eventually found her way into business and emerging technologies. We get into how that happened, what she's learned from making those transitions, and how her thinking around work and success has changed along the way. I enjoyed this conversation, and I think you will too. So let's get into it. Today, we'd like to welcome Ewelina Kurtys to the show. Ewelina is a deep tech strategist and executive who translated a rigorous background in PhD-level neuroscience and brain imagery into a career focused on the commercialization and strategic execution of frontier technologies, including AI, biocomputing, and neuromorphic systems.
Thank you so much.
Glad you're here. I've started this recently. This might change in the future, but today I'm going to read a bit of a positioning statement of why we do the podcast. The premise of the podcast is built on a key tenet that others have come before us and accomplished what we are striving for. And a great way to go further faster is to meet those people, learn from their experiences, understand the lessons they've picked up along the way, and avoid some of the missteps on our own journey. These interviews have taught me and or reinforced in me the 7 following principles. 1, people need people. 2, start before you're ready. 3, bet on yourself. 4, most things that someone wants to accomplish will always take longer and be harder than anticipated. 5, even though you don't see it, the people you admire for their success, whatever that success may be, have devoted their 10,000 hours to creating that success. 6, scared money don't make no money. And 7, go to where you're treated best. Ewelina, welcome to the show. How are we doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much.
Good. This might jump around a little bit, but I was doing some research beforehand for the interview, and I found your website. I went to your first blog post that you wrote on it, and I think the first sentence of that post stuck out to me as I continued to read, but I think it's the first 2 sentences. So here they are. This is what you wrote. I think the ability to distinguish between things you can't control and things we cannot control is fundamental. People who worry too much about things out of their control are deemed to be unhappy. I would love to unpack that a little bit, but I think my first question there is, I agree with that wholeheartedly. It's something I write in my journal probably daily, of focus on the things you can control and let go of the things that you cannot. How did you arrive here? And why was this on your heart, or why was it so important that, my first blog post on this website is going to be about distinguishing between the things that we can control and the things that we cannot?
I think how I arrived to this by reading Stoics. So it's definitely not my ideas. I think it's good to follow what other people already figure out. Sometimes, of course, you also need to think by yourself, but a lot of questions were already answered. I think all the questions probably someone has answered. So yes, by reading, and I found the Stoics particularly compelling. That's why I get fascinated. And why? Because I think maybe I'm a bit a control freak, so I wanted to maybe always to control the environment too much, and sometimes you need to learn to distinguish which things you can or you cannot control, and that helped me a lot. But I think for everyone is different, because we have different personalities, so we usually have different obsessions, or some people don't have at all, maybe. But I think everyone has different obsession, and there is always some philosopher who already worked out this obsession. So it's always
Yeah.
good I really recommend this to search in this kind of resources.
Do you have a favorite philosopher, Stoic philosopher?
No, I think Seneca, but I'm not an expert because I'm very slow. I'm not humanistic person, I would say. So I don't read 1,000 pages books. It's a bit hard for me because always take me a lot of time. So no, I wouldn't say I have. Maybe Seneca, yeah, because I learned most from him, but it was maybe coincident, who knows. And also the translation was good because what I think is also important, a lot of philosophy is often that the translations are very bad. So I have some books at home in Polish, my mother language, or English. And sometimes you are interested in the thinking because I heard this on YouTube or somewhere on the internet, but the book is so badly translated. I found this specifically for philosophy, that a lot of books I think are translated badly. Why? Because they were written, especially if you think about ancient times, they were written in totally different language, which is hard to compare with our life. So I think only if the translation is like updated to the today life, today language, and even to their reality, then it's easier to read. Otherwise, if you read it like old Greek style, translated to English, it's hard. It's just hard. Even if I would read it in Polish, my mother language. So I think that's often a barrier, what I found. So looking for good translations.
Yeah.
So that means you might need to buy more than one book of the same book, but in different translation if you don't like the previous one. So yes, that's what I discovered.
Yeah. Years ago, I bought The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Really enjoyed that. It's a short, easy read, but makes sense. Not even if you're going to war, just living your life. But I didn't realize, I wasn't like computing the fact that this wasn't originally written in English. So then when I bought it, I have multiple translations of the book because I kept buying and I didn't like, it was like his, I don't know how many principles of the art of war, but it's chapter by chapter, section by section, but he has a list of 20 or 30 principles that he talks about. And then these authors would have a foreword that they had written of their interpretation of what these meant. I was like, I don't care what this author, I just want to know what Sun Tzu thought.
Yes.
So I had a challenge doing that. But maybe jumping back or getting back on topic here, or starting to get on topic here, I want to dive into your career a little bit. But before we do that, I want to know how it all started. So when you look back at the younger version of yourself, what originally pulled you toward neuroscience and complex systems in the first place?
First in the science, I went the direction of science after I discovered neuroscience. And why science? Because I was fascinated by this. I don't know why. It just always seemed to be compelling for me. And I wanted to become a scientist. I wanted to take part in interesting discussions. And this is how I saw science, that you will have access to interesting knowledge and you can take part in something exciting. Because people sometimes believe that, artists or scientists, they have some secrets compared to society, but actually it's not this. It's just that they learn some stuff. So sometimes you know a little bit more. And it seems to be like a secret, but it's actually no secret. It's open to everyone. You just have to become a scientist. So yes, I wanted to know all the secrets. And so I always wanted to go to the PhD and become a scientist. And then when I did my research, some projects when I was a student, someone gave me very good advice. Think what is the most interesting for you. I was in medical field, so that was more like think about which part of the body is most interesting for you and then go for that. For PhD, and that was my answer was brain, and that's why I went to neuroscience. So I think it's good sometimes when you are at the choice moment that yes, to really follow something what is exciting, because that will help you in the future. That sometimes work is hard or boring. It's like at the end when you do research, it's more or less the same. I think if you do any topic in biomedical research is more or less the same type of work, many hours in the lab if it's experimental. So at the end, it doesn't matter if you work on liver or brain, but if you work on the topic which is compelling for you, then it gives you this extra power, extra energy. So that's why neuroscience, because I just found the brain the most exciting. And then I did PhD and then, then I stayed with the brain.
Question, you mentioned, I forget how you phrased it, some people think that the scientists have all the secrets.
No, maybe not all. Now it's changing because now maybe we are a bit less. But yes, people sometimes think that there are some secrets in the world, that things are maybe, I don't know, some conspiracy theories or whatever. But at the end, it's no secrets. You just need to understand this. So
what's one of those quote unquote secrets that you learned that's either your favorite or most compelling?
Oh my God.
Or enlightened moment?
Yeah, but it was really late when maybe a few years ago I realized that there are no secrets and that everything is open. You just have to study and understand this. So that was some kind of reflection I had.
Yeah.
But it was long after I finished my PhD. And I always like to give example of the stars, which was actually a few hundred years ago. In the past, we believed that stars maybe are just painted on the sky. And we believe that a lot of things about them. But after we studied astronomy, we understood that they are just different stars, that you can go there even if you have good equipment. And yeah, so this is just example, or the same when you look at, I don't know why something is poison or why something is healing you. So in the past, it was like a magic, but now we know how it works. So we know that there are no secrets. It's not a magic. It's just that we didn't understand this earlier. And I am this kind of scientist that I believe that it's like that with everything, that if we think something is a magic, it's just because we haven't yet understood this. And there are still a lot of phenomena in the world which we think are random or maybe hard to explain, but it's just because our knowledge is not full. Of course, science is still progressing, yes? So I believe in that there are, at the end, everything could be explained scientifically, but we just don't know. We are not always at the level to understand.
I want to ask this question. I want to understand what your experience was like in academia, and then if and when you transition to outside of academia, maybe compare and contrast the two different worlds of academia to business.
Yeah, so definitely academia I enjoy a lot, and I felt really happy that I have a chance to take part in the research. It was really my dream, and I was very happy. At the same time, I also knew always that I want to leave at some point, because I think I'm this kind of explorer that I always want to go somewhere else as well. And so I always wanted to leave academia. Academia is living in the bubble, I would say. It's not like a society. So usually you're surrounded by other scientists and it's specific environment. But I think like in many jobs, it's like that. You live in a bubble. And then you go outside. When you go to industry, you go like in the real world. So you will see much more variety of people. So not everyone is technical. And there are many people. There are operation people, there are business, there are lawyers, whatever. These things, you will have to get used to this variety, I think, when you leave academia. Because I would say, at least for me, academia was always like kind of everyone was more or less the same. Maybe different level, but we were all scientists. That's one thing. And then second thing is, I believe that at least when I left academia, I realized that it's much more about your psychology, not so much about your knowledge, because okay, the knowledge, you just have to pass the threshold for the knowledge, but the rest is actually your psychology part, like how much resilient you are, whether you are okay to talk with people, all these things, yes? So that really, but I think in academia is probably the same. I just never arrived to this level because maybe it's just the way how you progress. Because I think generally when you want to progress, it's always at some point, you know, when you are young, you study technicalities. At least that was my road. But after, when you are older, you just start to study psychology. In my opinion, is good order because then you actually have to learn other things. Okay, you have some technical background, but now you have to learn to be good with people, with yourself, not be stressed, and things like that. So maybe in academia, if you want to become a professor, it's probably similar because you will also have to network a lot and it's not only just pure technicalities. But for me, this transition was when I left academia because that was the time when I started to appreciate other skills than just pure technical.
Was that a hard transition for you?
No, I enjoy a lot. No, for me it was fantastic actually, but I was lucky, I think. I was at the time in London. I did my postdoc, so my last project in academia was at King's College in London. And London is a great place because it's a lot of options. So big city is good for changes, I think, because everything is in London and you can find it there. If you want to work in corporation or startup or whatever, also when you want to set up a company, which I did later, UK is generally, in my opinion, very good place because there is little bureaucracy. But yes, I think the transition was fantastic because I felt really good. I actually discovered new stuff, which I didn't know, like business development is something I didn't know exist. And then when I saw that you can be paid for this, I was so shocked because it's such a fun. So, you know, compared to long hours in the lab, which I enjoyed, but still it was much harder. And then you can just be paid for making connections, talking to people. This is for me much easier, but it's also personal because I always try to find something what I enjoy. Then it's easier. It's always easier. Yes. So I had always these priorities and I was a bit obsessed about doing what I like and not to. So I spent a lot of time on searching. And I think at some point I was just lucky. I ended up in a small company, which was actually led also by PhD, a woman who finished a PhD in mathematics and she set up a company. And she also became business development, of course, because when you have your own business, you have to do a lot of that. And then I could see what she did, like outside the PhD, yes, like what else can you do? So yes, I think it was also luck, but I wouldn't say it was difficult. No, I wouldn't call this difficult. Of course, I had to learn. That was my choice because I also left my expertise because I started with medical imaging because I did brain imaging, so non-invasive method. So I started this as a first job also. And later I moved to artificial intelligence, which is like different topic. I did not study that, so I had to learn. But of course, I had to learn a lot, but I wouldn't call this difficult. But that's because I did what I like. That's how I see this.
You had mentioned that something that drives you is that you're a bit of an explorer. So you like to understand the science, and that fueled your journey into academia, but you always knew that you would do something else because you had this desire to be, as you put it, a bit explorer. Tell me a little bit about that muscle that you have that you want to explore things. Like maybe where does that come from? Or how does that manifest in how you move through the world, that maybe you're just a genuinely curious person? But tell me a little bit about maybe where that exploratory muscle comes from.
I don't know. I think it's a matter of personality, and everyone likes something different. So it's more about discovering what you like. That's more like this. I'm not sure if it's strength or muscle. I think it's just my preference, and everyone has a preference for something. So some people have a preference maybe to do, I don't know, the technical stuff, or like to sit and dig into something. Other people like to talk. So it's more about discovering your preference, I would say.
Yeah.
But that gives you strength and an advantage, because if you do something according with your preference, natural one, then you will always have more energy.
Yeah. I also think there's a better return on investment for people who lean into their strengths as opposed to
absolutely.
people who want to improve on their weaknesses. So lean into your strengths.
Although I know that there are a lot of discussion about this. It's funny, when I was once doing some courses during my PhD, remember, was this example of, I think from football, that some people have the strategy that they practice on the strengths. Other people have the strategy that they practice on the weakness. And we had vivid discussion, what is better.
Where did the conversation land? Who won? Strengths or weaknesses?
I think they were 50-50. Not everyone agreed. But I think, my personal view is that you should always choose your main road according to the preference. Yeah. So the main road is according to preference. Like for me, it's exploration. But on this main road, you will also have weaknesses, and then you should build on them. We should also train them, but only if the main strategy is according to your preference. So that's how I see this. So for example, in the football example, which was very illustrative, I think, okay, if you really love football in general, then it makes sense to spend a lot of time to also practice your weakness. But if you hate football and you just want to force yourself to play, then you will never do this good. So I think the main strategy has to be aligned with your preference. Don't force yourself to be a doctor or lawyer just because your parents find it cool, but because you will hate it and you will hate your life, and after some time you will quit anyway, maybe. So yes, like general direction has to be good. And of course, on the way, you might be sometimes do something you didn't like.
Yeah. I think oftentimes some people spread themselves too thin, where they try to either, this applies like broadly, but focus on like too many things all at the same time. And that could be the same thing, whatever career path you're in, or if you're a football player and there's 10 skills to playing football, if you try to improve on all 10 skills at the same time, you're going to make progress, but that progress is going to be incremental across all 10. But if you say, I'm really good at this 10th skill, I'm going to get even better at that, I'm going to focus on that, and then put all the other skills to the side, it would be my theory that depending on what field you're in or what you're interested in, if there's 10 skills, say, focus on the ones you're really good at, leverage them the most, and then just improve on the weaknesses to a level of competency, right? And you can't allow them to hinder your strengths, but you don't need to turn a weakness into a strength. Just let it be, have it, just make sure that the floor is lower for it. That would be my take.
I fully agree with that.
Let's take a quick break from today's episode. If you're enjoying the conversation, take a second to like, follow, or subscribe wherever you're tuning in. We'd really appreciate it. You can also find us on Instagram at Randall Osché. That's RANDALL And check out more at podcast.randallosché.com, including show notes and other resources from today's episode. All right, back to the conversation.
You've worked at the intersection of highly technical innovation and real-world adoption. When did you realize that brilliant technology alone is not enough?
I think many examples for that. I could say every actually project I did. For example, when I started with medical imaging, I think, yes, there are a lot of great algorithms which can do better job than humans, but still there is a lot of resistance in the market always. So if you don't overcome this resistance, then your great technology will not be adopted, even if it's good. Because I see this also now with large language models. Sometimes some people are resistant to use it and they won't use it, even if it can improve your work. And now, actually, when we work at FinalSpark, this is a highly technical project. We try to build computers from living neurons. So this is crazy technical. We have a culture lab, biology culture lab. We have living neurons there. And then we also have engineers who try to program them like a computer. So this is very complex. So this is great technology with a great future to provide low energy computer. But on the other hand, we need to communicate this. So if we don't say this to people, then they will never know about this. So we have to explain this. And yes, I think you always need to take into account, let's say, the real world needs. And for example, in this case, when you have a deep tech projects like FinalSpark, I think world needs explanation because it's you're introducing some new concept. So it's always like people might find, oh, why we living without this? So why should we care? It's always a lot of work to explain the future, how we see the future, that in the future, probably AI is increasing exponentially the use of energy. So that's why we need to prepare for the future. We already anticipate this problem, that there will be not enough servers. And indeed, when you read the news, sometimes you see this info that now, like having silicon chips will have a great advantage for the countries even. So yes, so of course people try to find a way how to do computing with less energy, with not so many resources as is needed now, because it's not scalable. So we see this future already. So we explain to people how we see the future and also which solution we have. And also we have already users, although the product is not ready, but our lab can be used remotely. So yes, but without telling them, without communicating with potential users, we would never do this. Yeah, I think it's always a lot of explanation, like kind of people have to understand what you do. And then, of course, it's a lot of trial and error to figure out who would be most interested. Because when you have a new product, you always have this product market fit stage when you have to actually figure out where is your biggest client. You might have some assumptions, but you always have to actually test them in practice because in reality, always can be different. Yes, like in science also. Yeah, you do experiments and okay, sometimes it works like you hypothesized, but sometimes you can discover something different.
I want to talk a little bit about FinalSpark because I'm the least scientific person that you probably know, but I find it quite fascinating in a hard to comprehend way. So I guess to set the table here, from my understanding, or to give our listeners an understanding of how maybe some of this AI stuff works. AI is beneficial, but there's downside to AI and the world that we live in. I don't think we have arrived yet at a standard and practical application of how this is going to impact our lives for the next 5, 10, 15 years. I think that we're working on figuring that out now. The downside of AI is that it is, I don't know the best way to put it, it consumes a lot of energy. Every prompt that you give consumes a lot of energy to give you back a response, right? It's not magic. It doesn't come from the clouds. It comes from a data center. Those data centers consume a lot of energy, right?
Yes.
You probably know more about that than I do, so feel free to expand on that. But what you're doing, talk to me a little bit about then how your work at FinalSpark is counterbalancing that.
So neurons, biologically, they are in our brains. The building blocks of our brains, they're extremely energy efficient and they work in a different way than silicon processors. That's important to understand. Silicon is working on the logic gates, mainly, most of the architectures. And the neurons are processing information in time and space. So it matters when and where in your brain neurons are active. This is an information. So this is totally different type of processing, which fundamentally is more efficient. And indeed, when you look in practice, we can see that our brain is using much less energy, like 20 watts, like a little bulb per day. You can just eat one banana and that's enough and you can survive. So yes, so this is just fundamental difference on how neurons process information, and this is more efficient. Just nature built this that way. And people inspire themselves in software on how to optimize energy. And there is a lot of actually now interest in efficient computing, of course, because of this increasing amount of energy spent. So we are not the only ones concerned about this problem, and people get a lot of inspiration. Sometimes they try to make software which is working more like a brain. Even the father of AI, one of the fathers, Yann LeCun, the French scientist, he also said that the future of AI is more in the brain inspired architecture, not large language models like we see them today. So yes, so people try to inspire themselves. They try to do more how brain works. For example, one of the big holy grail in the field is one-shot learning. One-shot learning is in the brain. Cat and a dog once in your life and it's enough for you to learn the difference, while the software has to learn many examples. An example, how people try to inspire themselves to do software more working like a brain so that it can use less energy. And for example, learn from less examples. So yeah, so this is a very big field, but we have extreme solutions. So we don't want to just make optimized software or maybe some kind of hardware optimized. We just want to use the most efficient, we believe, building blocks for information processing, which are living neurons.
So instead of silicon processors that require a lot of energy, that would be in those data centers, your FinalSpark is working on living biological neurons.
Absolutely. And we want to build bioserver. So this will be a kind of cloud computing, but for bioprocessor. And it will cost much less. That's what all is.
So this is making more sense to me. I'm like mind blown. What does a bioserver look like? I don't know what a lab created neuron looks like, but how do you scale that to then create a bioserver that can then be leveraged for its intellectual capability?
We know what should be the components on high level, of course, but it's still in the process. Of course, it's a long-term project. We expect to build a computer in around 10 years. So yes, this is very long-term. At the moment, we have very small prototypes, which is around 10,000 neurons, 0.5 millimeter diameter each. But we would like in the future, we dream to build a huge bioserver, which will be even 100 meters long, a huge structure of living neurons, which has to be, of course, cultured in the special conditions. So neurons have to be always in 37 degrees Celsius, always in the water, always with the supply of nutrients and oxygen. So like every living cell, also in our bodies. And so we imagine this huge server when neurons will be cultured. They are very fragile. So some scientists will take care of them. Of course, they will be probably all will be automated. So maybe scientists will be just pushing the buttons. We believe all can be automated. But yes, you have to create a special environment so that the neurons can live long. And this environment is actually dictated by nature. Yes, neurons' optimal condition is in our brain. So in the lab, we have to reproduce them. So give them the same temperature, the same nutrients, oxygen, and everything. And we imagine that this bioserver will be available remotely. So actually the same as our lab today, but our lab is available for research because you cannot really do computation now. You cannot do image recognition with neurons yet. You rather do fundamental research on how neurons process information. But yes, this is the idea we want to achieve also in bioserver, that it will be remotely available. And now it's for research, but in the future will be for computing power. And you will be able to run applications on that. Like, for example, large language model, but low power version. For the end user, actually would prefer that it doesn't make any difference, but it will be just cheaper. That's our dream.
Cheaper and more environmentally friendly, correct?
Yes.
So you have a 10-year time horizon for this to come to fruition, right? It's brand new technology, a lot of work, a lot of things have to be figured out between now and that 10-year mark where you have a plan to have a bioserver. What is maybe the biggest, most immediate hurdle that you have right now that you're working on?
The biggest problem is learning in vitro. So that's the biggest challenge. And I think this is the problem not only for our field, but also for neuroscience and medicine, because there are many people who can benefit from this knowledge. But we want to solve this in vitro on the dish and for the purpose of building computers. But this knowledge can be used also in other fields. And basically, we want to learn how to master living neurons. So how to send them stimulation, either electrical impulse or chemical. You can release dopamine, for example, programmatically. It means that you write code in Python and everything is executed automatically in our lab. And you do all these things and you want to be able to change the connections between neurons, because this is how they learn. And if you can change connections between neurons, make them perform some tasks, that's exactly what we want to achieve. Because this, we believe we need this for building the computer, because we want to be able to introduce some knowledge in this computer that it will perform some specific tasks for us. And for this, we have to learn how to program neurons and also understand, this is connected, how neuron encode information, because nobody knows this today. And this is why it's so difficult, because we know quite a lot about the signals in neurons, but we don't know what they mean. And if we know what they mean, then we can also learn to program them, to change them. So I would say learning in vitro is a big question in the field now. And there are some other challenges, a lot.
10 years worth of challenges.
Yes. But I would say learning is most important for the purpose of building computer.
What, curious to know, to the extent that you're comfortable sharing, how does FinalSpark, like where does the funding come for that, right? Because you don't have a product yet that you can go to the marketplace to sell. How, like what continues to fund this research and then fund the project hypothetically for the next 10 years? How does that work?
Actually, I would say we do have a product which we can sell, which is our lab, because today people can subscribe remotely to our lab and access through internet browser like Chrome and do experiments. So that's a product which is working actually. And we have increasing number of clients. But of course, that's our not objective. So we have many options. So let's say currently we are self-funded by the founders, Fred Jordan and Martin Kuter. These are two Swiss entrepreneurs. They have already another company, which is called Altvision. And the company is totally in digital world and is very successful. So they have enough money basically to fund FinalSpark, which is a dream project, of course. When they started, nobody believed in that. So you usually have to start yourself such a crazy ideas. It's very hard to find investors. And so the options we have, we sell more and more access to our lab, and this can help us to reach profitability. Another option is that we find an investor. We are currently seeking 50 million Swiss francs investment. And this amount of money could make a huge difference for us and could accelerate our R&D, because then we would need this money for R&D towards building the computer. That would be the goal. So we have two options, that either we sell the access to our lab and we try to survive with that, or we find investor. Of course, investment is for milestones. So the first milestone is 10 million Swiss francs, but the total investment we consider is 50 million. And then other options are grants, but the grants are, of course, not that much money. And not every grant is suitable, but that's also something we are exploring. So there are many options actually to fund. And I see this, that the more advanced we are, of course, the easiest is go, because then we have more proof. Because when we started, like nobody believed, maybe almost or nobody believed that it makes sense. It's normal, I think. And then when you have some track record, you bring results, people start to believe in your company and also in the idea.
Yeah. Good luck on the funding.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I know that we're going to have to wrap up soon. A couple questions I like to ask every guest.
Yes.
What is the most influential book you've ever read?
I think many books. When I started to work in industry, I started to read a lot of psychology, which I highly recommend everyone. And then I also read about entrepreneurship. That was also discovery for me. Like I didn't realize this. Really, I was living in a bubble during my PhD. I didn't have idea about the external world. And I didn't even know too much about startups. I don't know, somehow I didn't meet a lot of people from startups world. So I didn't know a lot about this. So I discovered all this when I started to work in the industry. And then I read a very good book of a British entrepreneur who was Felix Dennis, and the book is called How to Get Rich. But of course, the title is just marketing. This guy was very good in marketing because he made his money in publishing business. That was at the time when newspapers were making a lot of money, I think 70s, 80s. But yes, his book was amazing for me. But it was just the right moment, right content.
You're my second guest that has mentioned that book.
Oh, really? Okay. But the guy is amazing.
Well,
he was so fantastic. Yes.
Yeah. Other person who actually recommended it is, his name's Jake Hissett, and his industry's artificial intelligence.
Oh, you see.
Yeah. So some connections there.
Yes.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Oh my God. No, I think I don't have any regrets. No, definitely to be more confident for sure, because when I was younger, I was definitely not confident, but that's psychology part, which I had to learn later on the way. So yeah, I think if I would, maybe I would advise myself to study psychology earlier. It would help me a lot. I think really it solves so many problems, which are really life become easier when you study a bit of psychology. Of course, I don't say it's easy, because you really usually have to digest things in the change your way of thinking, which is not easy process. But if you do this, then it becomes very easy. So yeah, I would definitely study more psychology, which is also brain, yes, because it's also about your brain. So it's within my interest, yes.
Question on that. I often think, as I've gone through my adult life, there's things I've learned along the way that are fundamentally, I think, like easy concepts to understand and apply, but you have to know of them to then apply them, right? It's not like advanced learning, like a complicated math or science, right? It's not neuroscience. These are fundamental truths that I have learned about life. Maybe some of them I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, this interview. So I often think about life as if somebody had a golden tablet and had written all these truths about life on this golden tablet, and then give this golden tablet to the 18-year-old version of yourself. And it would have lessons on there about how to move through the world in the most like effective and efficient manner to accomplish what you want to accomplish. Some of the things would be, again, mentioned at the top of the podcast of people need people. You can't get there by yourself. Bet on yourself. Lean into your strengths and not your weaknesses. Things like this. But then as I've thought through that and as I have experienced trying to manage change in an organization or manage change in others, or even help friends overcome hurdles, people aren't necessarily willing to absorb or implement or adapt to those, what I would think of are like truths. So from a psychological like perspective, or maybe a neuroscience perspective, what part am I missing there, where here's this thing that a lot of people can agree on to be true, but then there's a fundamental lack of adoption of those in individuals who probably need to adopt them.
Oh my God. I think all what you said was true from these things which you mentioned. And what I think is good, maybe because changing your way of thinking is a long process and it's not easy, and you have to reflect a lot. And also you need to be critical, because there is a lot of content, a lot of different ideas on life, and not all of them might be helpful for you. So I think still we need to be critical, always ask yourself if it's really what I want to follow. But I also think that today it's so easy because we have so much content of the internet. Before, to meet a successful entrepreneur or scientist or someone who did some great things, it was very difficult. Or follow lecture from MIT was something what only MIT students could do. But today, a lot of these things are on YouTube or maybe some other channel. So I think it's good to just search for your sources, what gives you energy. Yes, I would say that. And just feel it in your brain, because you won't change your way of thinking immediately if you want to improve it somehow. So it will always need a lot of repetition and maybe from different sources. But I always try to look at the people and ask myself, would I like to be like them or not? And if I want to be like them, then I listen to them. If not, then I don't listen. I listen to the next one. But I think it's great today. There's not secrets. Yes, everything is, there's so much information on the internet that even if you listen to this, that's already huge. And books and free resources, just free. I never pay for any courses of self-development or anything. I think it's not necessary. You have so much.
Yeah. I think the access to information over the last 20 years is just incredible. Graduated high school in 2003, I think. The most important thing to me back then was working out, lifting weights, running, etc.
Oh, well, that's very healthy.
Yeah. And diet, nutrition. But
that's cool. Question now for me, because with age is becoming more and more important. Actually, to care about your nutrition and sport.
I wish that the access to information now is so much greater, and it's so easy to be connected with subject matter experts. Like, just watch YouTube videos, like what workout to do, what should I eat for these types of results. I had to go to a bookstore, right? I had to go walk into a bookstore, get a book, go to the library perhaps. but that was the information you needed, and that's what you had to do to get that 20 years ago. Today, in maybe an hour of YouTube videos, you can come upon like reliable sources that are going to move you forward faster. In the essence of time, one last question here. How much of your success today would you attribute to your own sheer grit, skill, hard work? And how much of that would you attribute to luck and timing?
The older I get, I more see that all is luck. Because where you are born, the genes you get, the parents and everything, and your surrounding, your friends, it's really pure luck. So I am just lucky, I think. But at the end, of course, you have to work hard. And if you don't, you lose it. You might damage your chance. But I think it's all about luck because I think we don't choose the circumstances. So yeah, we can make the best of it. But the starting point is luck. It's just luck because there's so many situations when people are not lucky. And it's good to remember this and appreciate and not complain.
The reason why I like the question is I think sometimes it can be lost on a lot of people how lucky and fortunate they are. Just like you said, the genes that you're born with, the family that you're born into, the parents that you have or don't have, the city or town where you grow up or didn't grow up, that has a lot to do with how you move forward through the world.
I wanted to say one thing last. But feeling lucky is also a matter of attitude. And many people who are lucky don't feel like that. And that's just also pushing them back because we often don't appreciate. Sometimes people like to search for excuses. Because I didn't have something. I don't have something. That's why I cannot make it. So feeling lucky is also sometimes a choice. Although I really believe there are people who really are unlucky. And so in some way, it's also really pure luck. But it's also attitude.
And where can our listeners go find you at or find FinalSpark at? What are your email addresses? If by chance an investor is listening to this and they want to know more, how can they contact you?
So FinalSpark.com is our website. On the website, you have a lot of resources and many ways to get in touch. We have newsletter, we have contact forms, we have Discord chat. And of course, it's very easy to find us also on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a very good way today to reach out to people. So if anyone has a question, you can send us LinkedIn message or message through the website or email if you can find our email, which is also not difficult. So we answer from every channel. And if people are interested for general interest or investment or researchers who are interested, anyone is welcome because we want to spread the message about the work. So anyone who is interested, they always gets an answer from us.
Ewelina Kurtys, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
It's been a very interesting and enlightening conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that wraps up today's conversation on the Randall Osché Podcast. Thanks again to our guest for sharing their time, knowledge, and lessons with us. If the episode brought you any value, the best way to support the show is to follow or subscribe on your favorite platform. That helps us reach more people like you. You can also visit podcast.randallosché.com for blog posts, full transcripts, and other episode resources. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and keep moving forward.